Hey guys, today I'm going to teach you how to make these adorable little flower puffs, and I am going to teach you how to make both sizes. Obviously, as you can see, I prefer the smaller size. I just think it's a little cuter and it does work up a little bit quicker. These take me about 10 minutes. I'm not quite sure exactly how long this takes, maybe like 15 for the bigger one. But I just prefer the little ones because I think they're also a little better suited for the keychain size, and I do also plan on turning some into earrings. But I do want to show you how to make both so you can decide which one you like better and what you want to make it for. I also think the big puffs would be great for making one of those little puff mirrors. You add the little crochet puff flowers and glue them along the edge of your mirror. I think they're adorable. So whatever you want to use them for, I like to turn mine into keychains. That's why I have a lot more smaller ones and only one big one. But I do want to write a written pattern for these, which will hopefully be on my Instagram by the time this video is uploaded. So if you would rather follow along to a written pattern instead of a tutorial video, then head over to my Instagram. It's emmy.diy, and that's where all my free patterns are. So first we're going to start with the smaller one. And I am going to make it out of orange and then obviously yellow for the center. All you need for this is a small crochet hook, really whatever size you prefer. The size doesn't matter a whole lot. I have used both 3.5 and 4mm for some of these, and I can't even tell which one was which because they all look the same. But I'm going to be using a 4mm just because I think that was a little bit easier than the smaller hook. So all you're going to need is any weight 4 yarn, a crochet hook of whichever size you prefer. I'm using a 4mm, and some scissors. And then these two things are optional, but I like to add a keychain to mine. And then there is one small little part at the end where I do use a yarn needle, but honestly it's not totally necessary. So that's why I'm saying it's optional. Now there are lots of different flower puff tutorials out there, and I feel like they're all very, very similar, but everybody kind of makes them slightly differently. So I just wanted to show the way that I like to make them. Also, this tutorial is somewhat beginner friendly. I'm not going to be teaching you how to do the individual stitches, but as long as you know how to do these stitches, you should be fine, and then you can continue following this tutorial. But if you don't know how to do these stitches already, I would recommend looking up how to do those real quick and then coming back. But none of them are too complicated, so that's why I still say it's somewhat beginner friendly, because it's really not a hard thing to make. Alright, so I'm going to start by doing 4 single crochet in a magic circle. And again, if you don't know how to do a magic circle, then you could look that up. But there are also alternatives to where you can do like 4 single crochet and then just crochet into that little loop or whatever. I don't like to do that. I like to do a magic circle, so that's what I'll be doing for the tutorial. I'm gonna do 1, 2, 3, 4. Then I'm gonna tighten it. And now you might be wondering why we only did 4, even though there's 5 petals. And that is because we are going to slip stitch into this very first stitch right here. And since it's kind of tight, I like to go in this way and kind of just hook it first and then push my hook through there. So now we're just going to do a slip stitch and pull it through. And then that slip stitch is going to be for our 5th petal. So now we should have 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 5, that same stitch that we just slip stitch into. And see, that is one thing that some people like to do differently. For example, when I make amigurumi projects, I don't like to slip stitch to connect each row. I just go straight into it. And so that's why for this one, it does look better if you start with a slip stitch. So that's why I just took off one of the original single crochets, just because it just seemed unnecessary because you have this extra slip stitch here now. So that is the first part. You've got 4 single crochet and then you slip stitch into here. And then this next part, I'm going to show you how to make 1 petal, and then you're going to repeat that same step for all of the rest of them, the next 4 petals. So we're going to chain 2, and then we're going to do a bobble stitch into the same stitch that we just made our slip stitch into. This is going to be the first petal. And a bobble stitch is just basically 5 unfinished double crochets. So normally I would have yarned over and finished again to make a double crochet, but I'm not. I'm gonna do 4 more of those in the same stitch. 2, 3, 4, 5. And then you should have 6 loops on your hook, 5 for the 5 unfinished double crochets, and then 1 loop for the stitch that we did before, which was the chain 2. All right, and then we're going to just yarn over and pull through all 6 loops to finish that bobble stitch, and then we're going to chain 2, and then we're going to slip stitch into the same stitch that we just did the bobble stitch in. And now I always like to just kind of pull it like this, slide it over a little so that you can see the stitch a little better, and then you just slip stitch. And then that is the first petal, and that is also going to be the step that we repeat over and over again for the next 4 petals. A chain 2, a bobble, and then chain 2, and you slip stitch into the same stitch. That's all it is for each one of the petals. I'll go ahead and show it one more time, and then I'm going to do the rest off camera. So we've got chain 2, we're going to bobble. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We're going to finish the bobble, then we're going to chain 2, and we're going to slip stitch into that same stitch that the bobble's in. And then that's your second petal. Now I'm going to repeat that for the next 3 stitches, and don't forget to include that slip stitch from the very beginning as a stitch. So we're going to go into this one, turn it, and then this one. And I'll get back to you once I finish that. All right, I'm on my last petal and I just chained 2. So I wanted to go ahead and show this last part where I slip stitch back into that same stitch. And then I am going to just cut my yarn. And I'm gonna pull it out. Obviously it looks a little wonky right now. They're very flat because it's a very tight squeeze trying to crochet it. But don't get discouraged if yours looks a little flat or if your bobble stitches might be inside out. All you have to do is go from the back side and just push them out. And I have long nails, so this makes it kind of easy. I just stick my nail in there. It does still look a little weird right now, but that's just because we haven't added the center. But you can already tell it looks a lot puffier than it did before when it was all squished and flat. Now this is the part where I use the yarn needle, but it's kind of optional. You don't really have to do this. I'm going to flip around to the back side, and this last petal where we cut off the yarn, I am going to attach the tail end to my yarn needle. So now that I have my yarn needle attached, I like to go through this little area right here, kind of just whatever the first stitch of the petal right next to it is. I just kind of pull through that. So now that brings it more on the inside, and then I usually just go through one of these two right there. That's literally all I use the yarn needle for in this entire project. So now it's just a lot closer to the center so that when I finish it and tie them off, it just looks a little bit nicer to me. I like it this way. All right, so that is the petals, and now we are going to move on to the center. I know earlier I mentioned that it can be any weight 4 yarn. It really can be any because all of these were made with weight 4 yarn, but they're not all the same brand, but they still turn out the same size or pretty close to the same size either way. They all look normal. All right, so now we're going to do the center. And instead of starting with a magic ring, we're just going to do a slip knot on our hook. And then you want to start with your slip knot kind of loose. Normally, I don't start with a slip knot this loose in most projects, but for this one, you are going to want it to be loose because we are going to chain 3, and then this very first slip knot where you had, which is going to be the first chain, that is the one we're going to be making a bobble stitch into. And so it's just a lot easier when you have more room with a bigger slip knot. And then you can always tighten it at the end. So I'm going to chain 3, 1, 2, 3. And you can see my first one is a lot bigger than the other two, which is good. That's what we want. And then so now we're going to do a bobble stitch just into this first chain. And that's the first one. And I'm going to do that until we have 5, 3, 4. And again, we should have 6 loops on our hook. And I'm going to yarn over and pull through all 6. And then now the last step is to just chain 1 so it doesn't fall apart, and then you're going to cut your yarn. I just pull it out. And again, it looks a little flat right now, but I just tighten the chain at the end, and then I tighten the slip knot from the beginning. And then it's already kind of curling up now, and I just poke my finger through the back and push it out, and it makes it a lot more round and like the center of a flower petal. All right, now this is the best part of the whole thing because now we get to connect them together and actually see what it looks like at the end. So I am going to go through the back of my project, and I'm going to stick my hook through one of these little loops where the petals are. It doesn't matter which one. I'm just going to go through this top one, just like that. And then I am going to pick a side, doesn't matter which one, of the petal, and I'm just going to take one of the tail ends and we're just going to pull it through to the other side. And you want to pull it all the way out. And then now you're just going to pick one of these opposite ones, not one of the ones right next to it, one of these opposite ones. I'm just going to go through this bottom right one, put the yarn over my hook, and then pull it through to the back all the way out. So now you got an idea of what it looks like, but we need to turn to the back side to secure it. And I'm going to zoom in a little bit so I can do this on the table. All I do here is just tie a bunch of knots. That's basically it. And I'll show you the order of how I like to do it. So first, I start with the petal color, because that one's kind of more in the center. And I just do a double knot. You just tie it once, tie it again, right here. And then I'm going to do the center color, the yellow. And I'm going to do the same thing, just double knot it. There's one, and there's two. And so that honestly is probably good enough. You could cut it here if you want, but I like to be extra secure. And now you can see kind of which ones are closer together. And I just do a petal color with the center color on both sides. So I'm going to do the orange and yellow together and double knot it. And then I'm going to do the other two strings of orange and yellow and double knot them. All right, and now we are almost done. We have got this big old knotted section right here, which should not come undone. I'm just going to take my scissors and cut them all off. You can totally leave the backs of them like this. They honestly are fine. And most people aren't going to be looking at them anyway, since it is the back. But what I plan on doing for the rest of these is just cutting a small little circle of felt. Honestly, it doesn't even have to be a circle. Literally just like scrap pieces of felt and just gluing it on the back so that the back looks a little more flat. And I am going to try and, match colors. So for the orange, I'll do orange felt. For the white ones, I'll do white felt. I want it to blend in and look a lot better so that you don't see these knotted ends from the back. But that's totally optional. You do not have to do that. It does look fine just the way it is. And now I'm going to show you how I attach my keychains. So I like to use these little like beaded keychains. They've got a clasp on one end and then the other end is just the beads, and you just stick it to the clasp when you're ready and close it. So I just pick whichever way I want it to be facing, and I just go through whichever top petal is, and I just go through the front 3 loops. This one actually looks like these two got twisted together, so that's fine, honestly. You can hardly notice it. I am actually going to try and untwist it just so you guys can see it a little better. There we go. So I already put my hook in it once so they're loose so you can see, but 3 loops. That's just how I like to do it. And then I would honestly do the same thing for earrings because like I said earlier, I do want to turn some of these into earrings. Instead of attaching a keychain, I would just attach a jump ring or maybe a couple jump rings or maybe a jump ring and a chain, however you want to do your earrings. But definitely a jump ring and then an earring attached to the jump ring. But I would do the same way of pulling up these 3 loops and then attaching it through there. But this is really easy because now that I've got my hook through these 3 loops, all I have to do is attach my keychain to my hook. And you can use a smaller hook for this if you want to. I think I am going to do that because it will stay on a little better. See, there we go. That fits in there a lot better. I like to turn it with the hook facing the top and the keychain on the bottom. And I just pull it through all 3 loops. That's it. That's all I do. Now I'm just going to close the keychain. I'm going to hold the clasp in one hand, then I'm going to place the end of the keychain on the other side. And once you get it in there, all you got to do is push up on the clasp and pull on the keychain. And there you go. It just snaps right in. Super easy, super cute. I love it. And there we go. Okay, now we're going to do the big flower puff. You're still going to need the same materials either way. And it's made very similarly to the smaller one. You can see even the backs look very similar. But essentially it's made kind of the same way. It's just a lot bigger. And I'll show you how to do that. So in the first one, we did 4 single crochet and then the slip stitch, which makes 5 stitches for each of the petals. And then for this one, we are actually going to do 9 single crochet and then the slip stitch, which is going to be 2 stitches per petal to still make 5 petals. So we're going to start by doing 9 single crochet in the magic circle. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And we're going to tighten it. And since we did start with 9 single crochet, you are going to have a slightly bigger hole, but that can always be tightened as much as possible, and then it's going to get covered with the center part anyway. All right, so now we're going to do a slip stitch, and then now we're going to double check, make sure we have 10. So that same stitch that we just slip stitched in counts as the first one. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, including that slip stitch. Now this is going to be the part where we start the petals. I'm going to zoom in a little bit so you guys can see. From here on out, each petal you're going to repeat the same thing. And it is very similar to the first one, but the steps do take a little bit longer. So just be patient and make sure you get it right. And you might need to rewind and follow along again if it gets a little confusing. So we're going to start by chaining 3 instead of 2 like the last one. And instead of doing a bobble stitch, we're basically going to be doing a similar thing, but instead of double crochets, it's going to be unfinished treble crochets. And then instead of doing 5 in one stitch, we're going to do 4 in each stitch, but it's going to be 2 stitches next to each other. So 4 in this stitch and then 4 in this stitch, and then we're going to connect it and then move on to the next petal. So I'll show you what that looks like. So we're going to yarn over twice. Then we're going to go into that first stitch. Yarn over and pull through. We're going to pull through 2 loops and then 2 loops again. But we're not going to finish it. So that's 1 unfinished treble crochet. And we're going to do that 4 times in this stitch. So we've already done 1, so we got to do 3 more. And then 4 times in the next stitch. And then we'll finish the petal. So I'll show one more time. Yarn over, pull through 2 loops, pull through 2 loops, and that's 2. Don't forget to yarn over twice at the beginning instead of once. That's 3. We need 1 more. All right, and that's 4. As you can see, my hook is actually kind of short. So this is better if you have a longer hook or just one that doesn't have one of these ergonomic grips on it. But, I mean, I still use this hook either way, even though I don't have as much room. and it still works fine. It's just you kind of have to push them together a lot more. So it makes it a little more difficult, but it's not too bad. So now we're going to move into the next stitch, and we're going to do the same thing, 4 unfinished treble crochets. So now you should have 9 loops on your hook. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. That is the 8 treble crochets, because you did 4 in each stitch, which equals 8. And then the one from before where we chained 3. So now we are going to yarn over and pull through all 9 loops. And there we go. And that is our first petal. And as you can see, my center is getting a lot bigger as I keep working. But at the end, I am going to tighten it as much as possible. And then once we tie the backs, it's not going to come undone. So now we're going to chain 3 again, just like we did at the beginning. 1, 2, 3. And then we are going to slip stitch into that second stitch that we did our treble crochets in. So right here. And that is the pattern for each of the petals. You're just going to chain 3, 4 unfinished treble crochets, 4 unfinished treble crochets in the next stitch, yarn over, pull through all 9 loops, then you're going to chain 3 and slip stitch back into the last stitch that you did treble crochets in. So it's going to go every 2 stitches per petal. Now I'm still going to show it one more time, and then I'm going to do the rest off camera. Chain 3, 4 unfinished treble crochets, and that's 4. Now we move to the next stitch. Alright, now we should have 9 loops on our hook again. 3, 6, 9. Now I'm going to yarn over, go through all 9 loops, and then I'm going to chain 3. 1, 2, 3. Then I'm gonna pull my petal over to the side and go in that same stitch where we did our treble crochets and make a slip stitch. So we've got 2 petals done. So yeah, just keep doing that until you get to the end. And don't forget that slip stitch we made at the beginning will still count as a stitch. So you should go the next 2 stitches here and here, then the next 2, which will be here and here, and then the next 2, which will be here and here. And I will come back whenever I finish the petals. Alright, I just finished this, and I went ahead and did the last slip stitch off camera too. So now I am just going to cut my yarn, leave a little bit of a tail so I can tie it at the end, and I'm going to pull it out. And I am going to try and tighten this as much as I can. Alright, we're going to set this to the side, and now we are going to make the center. And I'm using the same yellow as before. We're going to start with a slip knot, and then again we are going to leave the slip knot really loose on the hook, and then we are going to chain 4. Alright, so now we have 3 small chains and 1 really big chain at the bottom. And then we are going to do 8 unfinished treble crochet, but since this is all just by itself, it does tend to fold over quite a bit. So honestly, if you want to do a couple less, you could. I think 6 would be fine, but I am still going to just do 8 for tutorial purposes. So we're going to yarn over twice. Go in the first chain, yarn over, pull up through 2 loops, and then pull up through 2 loops. And that's 1. And now we're going to do 8 of those. Alright, so we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, just as we're supposed to have. And then I'm going to yarn over and pull through all 9 loops. And then, again, as before, we're just going to chain 1 and cut the yarn. So the only difference between the center for this one and for the last one is that chain 4 at the beginning instead of 3, and then you do 8 treble crochets instead of double crochets. All right, and as you can see, I went ahead and just tightened my ends, and there we have it, our little center puff. And I'm sure you can guess what's next. It's going to be the same steps as before. I'm going to pick a side that I want to be my top. And last time, the petals were only done in 1 stitch. This time they're done in 2. And so honestly, it doesn't matter which one you go through. Just pick one. I am going to just go on this one that's on the left side here. But you do not want to be going through this center right here. You want to go through one of these stitches that the petals were done on. So right there. I just picked that one. And now I'm going to grab the end of my yarn from the center, and I'm just going to pull it through all the way. Now it's through. And I'm going to do the same thing on the opposite side. I tend to go to the petal to the bottom right of whichever one I pick as the top petal. And I'm just going to go through that stitch there right underneath it. And we're going to pull the yarn through. My hook slipped out, but it still went through. There we go. All right, that's what it's going to look like. And now we're going to just tie it off. And also, like before, I am going to take my yarn needle and put the tail end from the very last petal through it. And I am just going to weave that a little bit closer. So I'm going to go through this first stitch right here of the next petal. And then I'm going to go through this stitch right there, right underneath the petal. And double knot that. We're going to double knot the yellow for the center. And now I'm going to take a purple and a yellow and double knot those, and then the opposite purple and yellows and double knot them. All right. Now I'm just going to take my scissors and cut the ends, and then you're done. And there's the finished product. I think it's so cute, and I actually really like this purple and green together. They're so cute. I am actually not going to put a keychain or earrings on these just because they are a little big. Not that they're too big to be a keychain or earring, but I think I'm actually going to save these and glue them to the rim of one of my small mirrors that I have, and I think that's going to be really cute. So I'm not going to put a keychain on these, but if I did, it would be the same process. I would just pick whichever petal I want to be my top, and I would go through these top 3 loops in the center like that. And that is where I would insert my keychain or jump ring if I'm going to add an earring or whatever I want to add. All right, so that is it for this video. Don't forget that I am also going to have a free pattern for both of these flowers, the small and the big one, on my Instagram at emmy.diy. So if you want to go check that out, you can, especially if after watching this video you like it and want to make more but don't want to have to refer back to a video to remember the steps. You can go check that pattern out. Please leave a like or a comment if you liked it. Subscribe if you want to see more videos. I appreciate every single one of you here watching this, and I will see you next time. Bye!